Well, hello and welcome to another Faith, Philosophy and Life with me, Mr. Shelton. I do hope that you are doing well and the people that you live with as well. We're thinking about fairness at the moment, and there's lots of unfairness in the world, but today we're going to be thinking about the difference that we could make to help bring fairness to the world and some of Jesus' teachings about that. So what I'd like you to do is to do a little mind map on who has needs in the local community and how can these needs be met. Okay, so think about vulnerable groups, think about people that have needs, basically, and see what you can get written down about that. And hopefully you can get quite a few things written down. It's going to take you a little bit of time. I am, however, going to play the cheesy intro sequence because, well, why not? It needs to be played at some point. However, what I'd like you to do is maybe pause it at the end or play it in slow motion. Yeah, and and write down as many things as you can. So let's get that done, and then let's see how many things you can get written down around your mind map. Okay, so today our title is What Have Sheep and Goats Got to Do with Fairness? What have sheep and goats got to do with fairness? And we're going to explore how the parable of the sheep and the goats can help teaches us to serve others with fairness. So please get the title written down. And as I always say, please do make sure that you get everything sent through to your teachers at the end. It's going to be a good outcome if you can describe what happened in the parable of the sheep and the goats. It's going to be great if you can explain what the parable of the sheep and the goats have to do with fairness. And it's even better if you can reflect on how being a leader could bring fairness to a community as well. So we're going to read from meaning. I've got group workers there, but I think that might be a little bit hard to do unless you're watching me with somebody else on FaceTime. And it's a bit of social and moral as well. What's right and wrong, and how does a community help each other? During today's session then, we need to look at some definitions, we need to think about examples of leadership, and then we're going to look at the parable of the sheep and the goat, and then there's a task as well. So first off then, we need to understand a little bit about New Testament understanding about the shepherd and the flock. So a shepherd is someone who serves the flock. That's sheep, obviously. Someone who keeps them safe, gives them purpose, gives them direction, and shepherds them in the right direction they need to go. Looks after the needs of the sheep, and therefore the shepherd in a community would look after the needs of the community. They have to make leadership decisions on what the right thing is to do, and your priest would be a shepherd of their flock, the flock being the church, so the priest needs to make decisions spiritually for people. Obviously it's in conjunction, but they're going to try and guide you where they think the right thing to go, and they use their skill to help best look after people. The flock then, well, the Bible says we're like sheep. We need a leader, otherwise there'd be chaos, and that may not be your priest or a vicar or somebody else, but as people, we generally need leaders, even though we may be leaders in some of our own spheres as well. I'm sure that we are. We will look towards someone for guidance and care, and we're all made up of individual people, and therefore we all need to be treated differently because we've all got different needs. That's just a little bit of background for you. The next thing that I'd like you to do is in the description below. I'd like you to access these cards. I'd like you to decide which ones best describe a leader, who serves their team. Okay, so which one's best to describe a leader that serves their team? So you'll need to get those up on the screen. You'll need to read over those. You can make some notes if you wish to, albeit that's not essential, but it will give you some things to think about. So pause me now while you do that. Give yourself 5 minutes or so, and then come back to me. Okay, so we haven't yet really covered any of this, but we have understood a little bit about leadership, and we have understood a little bit about what sheep are. Sheep are. Okay, so how do you think you could help this person out? Okay, now the next image then, a little bit more shocking. How do you think you could help this child out? Okay, here's one. How do you think you can help this person out? And should you even help this person out? A criminal. What about this one? Slightly easier, that one. You see, those are examples when you think about how you can help people out. But they're examples about how you are a shepherd, how you're trying to help other people. I wonder how you'd describe a servant leader. Okay, so how would you describe a servant leader? Just come up with a sentence in your book, what you think you might understand by the term a servant leader. So a servant leader, according to Greenleaf, is a servant first. Okay, a servant, someone who helps other people out. It begins with a natural feeling that one wants to serve and to serve first. So a servant leader is somebody who goes to help other people out, and in doing so actually ends up leading, even though that isn't necessarily their intention. In Mark's Gospel, Jesus says this: whoever wants to be a leader among you must first be a servant. So that's a very interesting phrase, because it's the idea that Jesus expects people to be a servant. I mean, you think back to when Jesus takes his towel off in the Last Supper and washes the disciples' feet. That's an example of Jesus being a servant. And if Jesus is a servant, then maybe we too should also be one. Just check that against your definition of servant leadership earlier, and is there anything you need to change? So, we said a parable of the sheep and the goats. So we're going to explain the differences between the sheep and the goats and the reasons they're separated. I'm going to ask you to think about what this parable teaches about serving each other. Give 3 examples of how this could be applied to someone's life, and what the parable teaches about fairness. Now, what I'd like you to do, because I'm not actually going to show you this, shock horror, you're going to have to do some reading. What I'd like you to do in the description below is find this parable. I'd like you to read it over, and I'd like you to answer those questions. So let's do that now, and then come back to me when you're done. Okay, so hopefully now you've read over it. Now you need to make sure those questions are answered. So he said it'd be good if we could describe what happened in the parable of the sheep and the goats, and hopefully we've got that pretty much boxed off now. Great if you can talk about how the sheep and the goats have got to do with fairness, and again hopefully with those questions you've just done. And now we're going to revert back to this leadership of a community thing. Okay, so we've done our definition, our leadership of parable, we've now got our task. So I've got a clip here that I found from another school talking about how they could put the sheep and the goats into action. So I'd like you just to watch this. This is going to hopefully inspire you for what we're about to do.
We're here at Cottingley Hall Care Home.
We've been helping the elderly residents in our care home paint pottery.
Like, a lot of us thought that
elderly don't really have many other people to talk to other than the people in the elderly homes. So I thought that we could just give them a bit of a conversation.
And we all thought it was a really good idea.
Elderly people are always going to be here. It's important to spend time with them.
And it's easy to do, and also it'll make the elderly people feel more loved and cared for.
We've asked them what their favourite colour was, we've asked them what designs they want or what they like.
Some residents have disabilities, so being with a woman with shaking hands, and she needs some help, so I've helped her with that.
Say when they're eating dinner or eating breakfast, they can just look back at what they did with us and hopefully see a good memory.
It's helping the community and it's giving them something better to do.
So our learning objective was to explore how the parable of the sheep and the goats help teaches us to serve others with fairness. So this is your task. Okay, your team has been invited to the local community centre to run an afternoon session for the elderly for their lunch. The session's going to be 1 hour 30 minutes long. 30 people normally attend, and 5 people have mobility problems. I'd like you to come up with some ideas of how you could serve that particular community, what their needs, and how can you try and meet those needs. And remember, it's about bringing fairness to a community that's struggling, to a vulnerable community. How are you going to try and help these people? That's your task. You've got the rest of your time of your lesson. I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for your time. Take care of yourself, stay safe, wash hands, God bless you. I'll be seeing you soon.